Step one is we're going to cut in our piece of paper. My piece of paper is pink because some of the sacred lotus are pink. And so that's for extra bonus points. And all you need to do is to cut a big, I first thought it needed to be a teardrop, but it doesn't. No, all you need is a big rounded top piece like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a snip down the middle here, but not all the way to the end. I am going to stop about that far from the end. So I've made a pair of little pants that you can walk around, okay? That's our snip number 2. Could you get that tape dispenser out of the drawer for me? Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to take one of the legs of the pants and I am going to cross it over to the bowl position, right? Right? So cross those legs over, and thank you. And I'm going to tape them down. Uh-oh. And so I'm going to put my piece of tape up here across the bowl. I've got a piece of tape right up in there, holding those together. And I'm going to put one on the other side. Put my piece of tape on the other side, right down in there. Now, back to the scissors. I'm going to cut the tip of this to a point.
Jack, did you tape down the loose ends?
So I didn't have to go, so my ends are still kind of loose.
Okay.
But they're close enough together, and most of the time I'm gonna be holding it by this end anyway. But actually I wanted the tape to be out here in the body of the thing. And then there's one line that I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw a line from the little dimple that you see. And I'm going to draw that line up to the end and up to the end there. So I have a line across it. You now have your own personal scoop petal. And we're going to be looking at this 2 ways. We're going to look at it with the view where the rounded end is the front of our shape. And we're going to look at it also with the pointed end being the front of our shape, because on some lotuses, there's more pointed petals or tepals, and on others, they're more rounded. Mine's a little bit asymmetrical. If I want to, I can give it a little bit of a trim. That's a little bit better rounded. Now, why, you ask, are we doing this? Because, but let's, I'm actually going to be needing to draw on this in a little bit, so I'm going to keep this at a slopey slant. Right, so here's what we're going to do. I want to show you all a picture of some lovely lotus. Right. So here is a drawing of a lotus. And what you're seeing is a bunch of petal sepal things here. So I'm going to call these tepals for now. Um, and they have these ones here in this flower that are a little bit closer to the sort of the pointy end is out, the more rounded end being towards the base of it. It actually wouldn't come to a full circle on its bottom. It would go into a little stalk that would insert into this, the flower base. But there's a bunch of these and they are pointed in different directions. And so notice that, actually what I can do is, actually could I kind of scoot in here with you, Mia? Let's see, drop. So I am, actually let's go for more a bold color. Format, I want both of it. All right, so check this out. This little petal here is coming out and up and over. There's a little bit of a lag on my screen here. And the center line of it is cutting down this way. There's some sort of strange geometries and strange shapes going on here. It's this cup-shaped thing that kind of comes to a point. Let's compare that with this one here. All right, I've got a little cup, comes up to a point here. I'm coming down this side comes up to it, and here is the central ridge. So what I'm doing is I'm dividing both of these into a couple of shapes. Yeah, if you draw along in your journal, this is going to really help. What I want to do, I want to be able to visualize these sort of strange shapes, and I want to understand the geometry of why they are curling the way that they are curling. It really helps me if I want to, like, let's look at this one over here too. So it's coming up here, over here, and here's this side coming up, and the center line is coming down there. Just sort of think to yourself, like if I went and made something like this up, I would probably draw something like this, right? But that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it comes up and over. There is a little central curve down, and then we have over and down.
Jack,
so yes, I'm sorry.
Jack, is it possible to increase the width of your drawing tool?
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, how you like me now?
That better? Should be better. Yeah.
All right. So, so here is, this little shape right here. All right. That is a little bit counterintuitive. So here's side one and side two. I want to be able to see these shapes and visualize them and be able to record them on my paper. Now, it's easy if you are tracing like this on a photograph, right? So, like, just draw it like this. Look, I got it right. No, so I'm going to break down how can I look at this, be able to visualize it in a way that I can start to get it down on paper. And what I'm going to do is we're going to recognize that there are some unexpected shapes happening, and that I am going to, and there's two sides to them. I have the side on one side of that mid rib and the other one. And now what I want to do is figure out how, when I really look at my flower, what am I looking for? How do I visualize it? And then how do I transfer that to paper? Let me just point out one more of these ones that's a little bit interesting. Here's this one over on the side, and it's got an edge that goes up like this. Here's its bottom edge coming in like that. And we're seeing the other side wrapping around there. So you've got here in this one, you have an underside that is whole this shaded area, and then you have a top side, which is the part that I've left blank. You look over on some of these other petals, you're seeing the same thing. I'm seeing one shape over here. That's the, or I'm seeing underside, and then I'm seeing top side there. So here is underside and top side. So I've got these two shapes. A big part of what is going to make me successful here is I'm going to stop this share, and I am going to share a different screen with you. And I'm going to, for this, I need you, if you would please, just to scoot over a little bit, because I'm going to need to scoot my chair in front of this drawing pad. No, it'll be hard to do, if it's possible. Thank you, Honey Bear. All right, here we go. Now, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to move this video away from the. All right, so now we are looking at all right, here we go. So what I'm going to be doing, and is hold on a second. Let me get my drawing tools ready. And I want to move my palette here. There we go. Here's what I want to be able to do. I need to look at a petal, and in my mind's eye, flatten it into two shapes. I want to be able to look at this and see, here is shape number one. Oh, I've got a big lag coming on my screen right now. Sorry about that. Next to shape number two. All right. So I need to be able to see these as two shapes, one right next to each other. Without tracing on this one right here, let me just show you how I would think about that. I would think about that petal as being one shape on the far side that comes out and over, comes down. You notice I'm making this a little bit more angular when I'm just initially carving in these angles. And the reason is that the reason I'm doing that is that it's just going to help me sort of see these corners. Later on, I can kind of round it in my head, all right? So I'm going to think of this as a side one, and it's going to be next to a side two. And look at what's going to happen with side two. It's going to be coming out to this corner and down like that. All right. So I'm getting side one, side two. I want to think of these as shapes, as flat shapes, not things curving around, but just flat shapes. And I need to get myself to sort of blindly, slavishly follow those shapes. That's where our little model comes in. What we're going to do is we are going to take this little model and we're going to turn it around to some different angles. Let's see here. And I need to be in Zoom. Nope. I've lost track of there's my Zoom control panel. Stop share. And okay, so you're looking at me. I'm going to jump over to my document camera and show you, in case you didn't get to make your own little model. Here we are. All right, so here's a little petal, right? And what I want to do is I want to look at it as a flat shape. Actually, let's first turn it this way. All right. So from this angle, what I'm seeing is sort of a teardrop, right? Sort of a clear, straightforward teardrop. I'm actually going to give mine a little bit of a crease down the middle here. Make it a little bit, there we go. But even with that crease down the center, you're seeing a teardrop. So what I want you to do is, let me zoom. Plus, oh no, I have to zoom. I can't do this. Hold on, I'm going to make one other adjustment. I think I may have. Visualizer. Here we go. All right. Let's zoom on this. All right. So, Melinda, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, I can see the petal. The round part is off the screen.
Ah, okay.
Did you want the whole petal in view?
Yeah,
or just the point? We can see like from,
yeah, let me move this.
from the clip towards the point.
There we are. There we are.
Right
All
there.
right. So what I'd like you to do is just to draw this shape on your piece of paper. Draw that shape on your piece of paper. And notice that this side is, if we kind of think of the central axis, maybe this side is straighter, this side coming up. So it's a little bit asymmetrical. And let me see if I can get this focused a little bit better for us. There we are. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it slightly. All right. And what I'd like you to do is to draw it again. And what you're doing is you are you're trying to copy that shape as best you can as you see it. How is this shape different than the last one that you did? So if I'm drawing along with you, I am seeing I'm seeing side that comes up and down. There's a straighter side and there's that. And the center line of it is kind of coming down in here like that. Now I rotate this a little bit more. And now you're seeing part of the top, part of the bottom. Let me pinch it down here. Oh, come on. There we go. Right like that. There we are. Let's go for that. And here, what I'm seeing is a bottom angle and coming out flat. And the other end is coming out and around. Or actually, maybe it's coming down more like this and then up. I'm going to tilt it to a different angle here. And then I will work on the focus for a second. But try this angle. Look at the two sides, those two sides. All right, I've got this shape up here, and then There's that line down the middle. What is that shape? As I think about this, I think of myself getting a little line and a straight line on one side. I think of myself kind of coming out to a corner here and down. Maybe I'll use a pen or a pencil that shows up a little bit better. Oh yeah, that'll be better. So I think I'm seeing something like this. Oh, no. What do I have here? Yeah. Now I'm going to turn it again. All right, there it is. I tilt it again. And so this time I'm seeing a line that comes down, the center line. I go up to a corner on one side to a point. And then the other side, what is it up to? It is coming out. And then there is a slight angle change. And then we're going out to there. So you see what's going on here? I am taking this strange foreshortened shape and just flattening it into two shapes right next to each other. When you do this with your own paper model, it will be more difficult because you know that it's a three-dimensional thing. It's actually a little bit, when you look at your computer screen, you're seeing a two-dimensional shape. You're then drawing a two-dimensional shape, right? Let's see, we get this at this angle, right? That's pretty easy. It's easy to, when you look at the computer screen, to see a two-dimensional shape and get a two-dimensional shape. But when you're looking at your object in your hand, it's actually a 3D object. It'll really help you a lot if you close one eye when you look at your object. That way you're not seeing it from, actually if you do have a real one in front of you, just hold it up in front of you and close one eye, then the other eye, close one eye, then the other eye. You'll see that the shapes on either side will change a little bit. One eye will be able to wrap around the back a little bit more than the other. And that gets, we don't want that. So when you're drawing, you're just going to be looking through one of those eye holes. Right? So we'll do one more little view here. In this one, I am seeing it's coming over, short down, and up. Then I'm seeing we're coming over and down. And then I'm seeing some backside sticking up there. So this idea of taking a shape and turning it around, being able to rotate it in your head so that you are seeing it from these strange angles and being able to see this as a shape next to a shape is very powerful for drawing foreshortened petals and things like that. So you're just drawing a shape and you're putting it next to a shape. I'm now going to turn this so that this roundy end is a little bit more pointing towards us. And we're going to see what we get with this. All right. Here is view. Let's try this one. Here's view number 1. Hold on a second. There we are. View number 1. Now, again, forget that this is any rounded shape. Just draw this as a flattened shape next to another flattened shape. This flattened shape has corners. I'm going to draw in those corners. Why don't you try to? Oh. There we are. So I'm seeing that it has a flat top. It has a side that comes down here. It has another side over here. It has an angle there. And that is next to, that's a 4-sided shape next to a 3-sided shape. Same side here. Actually, I'm going to change the angle of that to there. I'm going to come down here. So I'm getting shape next to shape. Let's scoop this down this way a little bit more. And now this is a challenging one, right? But let's just start by looking at this shape right here on the underside. Oh, I just moved it. So sorry, so sorry. We'll stick with this, right? So get this shape that I'm not touching. And look at that. That's a triangle. Draw in that triangle. Draw in that triangle. And that is next to another triangle. Oh, that's hard to get. And then on the back, there's a long side and a short side. There's a short side up here, and there's a long side down here. Finally, if you want to be really cool, we can add in that this one has, I'm seeing a shadow in this area and a little bit of shadow along here. That's how we're going to visually break down these shapes. So the reason that we made this little paper model is you can take yours, and when you're just sort of on your own, just hold it as, here's a great kind of COVID activity. So I'm going to hold it at one angle to myself here, and I'm going to go, we come up, little tail here, down, down to edge here. I'm going to have a small triangle going out the other side here. I can see a little bit of the far side there.
We're not seeing the pink petal very well
I'm
right
sorry.
now.
So I was just holding this at a, the angle that you're seeing on your screen is different than the angle that I'm looking at. So I was just looking at a view where this whole part here was the underside. And then I had, you know, top. We're seeing parts of the top here. And I can't make, if I were to say to myself, if you had a rounded thing that was kind of going to a cone, a lower scooped bottom, how would that look from a 3/4 view? I couldn't make that up. But what I can do is hold my model out and be able to go, I'm seeing a shape like this on the bottom, and I'm seeing a shape like this on the top. So I can draw what I see and just put those shapes next. Oops, I'm doing it again. Sorry. I can draw what I see. I can put those shapes next to each other, and that's what you want to be doing for this. So for each petal in this system, you're going to be looking at as its own geometric playground. Each little petal is going to be, let's jump back to this, this other view of the, here we are, back to this view of the lotus. And what you want to be doing is putting shape number 1 next to shape number 2. You're going to, each one of these is its own little adventure. And so you don't want to just drop in a shape without considering it. You want to really think of, like, what is the geometry of this weird one doing? Oh, this one comes up to a point here. Here's its center line. And this other side I see coming to a corner here and then down like that. So when I see things like that, and I say, I like to say to myself, like, oh, I didn't expect to see that, right? But I am. That's cool. I'm going to get that into my drawing, and it's going to help my drawing. So that helps us think about each one of these as an individual piece, right? Each one of these petals. And so certainly, if you can draw each of the petals, all you have to do is put all those petals together, right? Wrong. Because look at this credible geometry of how all these petals are put together. So how do I manage that? How do I think about that? That's rough, right? So I agree. But here's, before we kind of think like, oh no, what do I do with all of this crazy geometry? Is first of all, just notice that there are some that don't have as many petals, right? Here's one, there's not quite as much of a nightmare of geometry that is staring us in the face. But we do have, for each one of these, each one is its own individual shape. We want to look like, here's this edge scooping down there. What is the shape at the top? What is the shape at the bottom?
Is that a picture?
That's a photograph, that's right. So here's one shape next to another shape, right? And what you'd be doing is you'd be believing these shapes. But now what we want to do is we want to get those shapes into the right place. This one is not quite as much a geometry nightmare, right? But again, you do have to, we still do want to be able to pay attention to who goes where. And so thinking a little bit about the structure and geometry of how these things are put together is going to be very, very useful. All right, so we're going to jump all the way back to this one. And because this one is the most complex, it is going to be useful for us to see what the meta pattern is. Because this one it's still kind of tight and there's so many layers here, we'll be able to figure out what is going on with this in a really fun way. And we're going to take a look and see if we can see the spirals. Right? So here we go. And I'm going to change our view one more time. Right. Oh, so Sweet Bears, you have, your class starts in...
No, I set the timer, that's why.
Oh, perfect. Great, well done. So let's jump to... Oh, I have to stop sharing. Right. We're going to go for one more view here. Thank you for joining me, Bears. We're going to go to, here we go. Back to this scary thing. What I want to do when I'm looking at a page like this is to think of the geometry of how these petals are organized. And so what I do is I look for things that are kind of lined up. And for that, it's helpful to think of having some kind of reference points. So I'm going to go from the tips of some of these petals here. And what I'm going to find is that there are going to be some sweeps, some spirals of petals that are swinging up around this bowl here. Let's see, are you to here? I think that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking, so if we were to fold this all back together, we would find Fibonacci style, these rings of these petals wrapping up into here. So I want to, as I'm thinking about this shape, can I keep the sweep of some of these lines lined up with each other? And so in blocking this in, I'm noticing those. I want to keep that geometry, but also notice that there's another geometry this way. The top of, actually, let's use a different color because we can. All right, so from here down to the top of this one, whoops. All right. Let's see, we're coming across this way. And are we seeing that same thing here? Hope I'm lining up the right ones. But the relationships of these petals and where you sort of see sets of them that are in lines, I want to keep those ones sort of lined up with each other. So when I'm looking at something like this and blocking it in, I find it's very helpful to just think of these as initially sort of kind of a placeholder shape with a central axis. So this one, you might just, in your journal, make a ball with an axis on it. And this one is a ball with an axis on it. And this one is a ball with an axis on it. And then you start with the ones that are the closest to you. Right. This one is a ball, and its axis is right along the side. So start with the ones that are the closest to you, and then jump to the next layer back. And I'm going to notice that where does this one insert on here, and where does it connect in here? Right, so this one is going to be in here. If you place this little petal and you put it over here, it's going to mess up all your geometry when you get further into the flower there. So I'm noticing where it attaches, and its axis is coming up this way. It's roughly going to be in here, and it's got a central axis here. So this next one, I'm working from front to back. So the next one is roughly in here, and its central axis is in there. Now I'm going to look at this next one. Where is it on this going to attach? Where is it going to come in? So I've got a few kind of landmarks so that this next one that I put in is going to go in relative to other ones that I've already got put in. And say you are going in here, and there's your central axis. Right? And then, you can continue working from front to back. You can build up those shapes, but as you're putting in a shape, look for what are its anchors on the stuff that you've already drawn. And that's going to really help you be able to block these things in. We'll get this one here. Its anchor comes in here and down here. So it's going to be roughly in there. Now on a photograph, you're trying to look at like, where is it relative to all these other ones? You sort of see there's these ambiguous things that are kind of sticking up back here, and you can't quite tell where they come in. That's one reason I really don't like drawing from photographs. If it were a real plant, you could immediately see like, oh, this one here, that's my foreground element. That one is in front of this, and you can move your head around to see like, oh yes, its axis is clearly on the other side, and I can't see it from this angle. When you're working from a photograph, it's nice because it's two-dimensional and you're drawing in 2 dimensions, but it still can kind of drive you nuts. But this process of first kind of look for, are there things that are lined up that I want to keep lined up? Right. And what are going to be some of those arcs across both directions across your shape? Then give yourself, I like to sort of start with some kind of clear anchor petal. And I think of the anchor petal as being, and one that is sort of just, nothing is overlapping it, like this little petal right in here. That's your anchor petal. Then you can just block in the locations of everybody else relative to that. And then I would come along and say, all right, let's refine this by looking at those shapes. This shape here, here's my center line there. It's going to have a thing down there. It's going to do something in here. That's going to be my shape number 1. Then I'm building out. So let's fast forward in our head and imagine that we have blocked this thing in. We have roughed out the shape of those petals, really looking at the geometry of each one, kind of going like, all right, this one here's shape number 1, this bottom curve. Shape number 2 is doing that. And for cool details, here's where the bug bit it. So you've blocked your whole thing in, and now you want to kind of get in there and draw it with kind of your final lines in greater details. What I'm going to suggest you do is this approach of kind of working from front to back again to refine your lines. Start that way and start with things that are close to you. And what I do is I just kind of come along, and places where my drawing is, I've got lines that are in front of other lines. I'm going to press a little bit harder on those lines so that there's a thicker line, kind of a punch line right up in here. And so if I were doing this petal, I would give it a little bit of a thicker line in here. See, I'm strengthening this one. I want the ones that are in front to be heavy lines. So where this one tucks in, its line is going to get a little bit more skinny before it hits where this one's thicker line is going to be. Here's. So I can get in there and reinforce some of those lines. Another thing I can do is I can add just a few little kind of key divots of darkness. There'll be a few places, like you see right in here, there's going to be this little shadow place. I can just give this a little bit of a darker kind of punch down in there. And that will sort of recess a few little spots. I want a few little places. You can think of places where three lines come together. Or sorry, two. I've got this shape coming down here. I've got this shape coming in here. I want to add just a little bit, kind of a sense of depth. You can sometimes punch a little bit of darkness right there. A little. It's not a bad point. So if this came down and met that edge, sometimes what I do is I just kind of give a little bit of a dark accent right in that spot. Just kind of tucks this petal into that spot. Another thing that I'm going to try to avoid as I'm kind of doing my final drawing on this is I'm going to be wary of what I call triple junctions. A triple junction is a place where three different elements by chance come together all at one place. And sometimes when you're looking at reality, you will see these. And if you draw what you see, it'll be more confusing to the people who are looking at your drawings. So what I do is I slightly change my angle. I do a little cheat to make my drawing a little bit more visually understandable. Let me give you an example of that. So here's this petal coming down here, right? And then there's this one here. Its edge is coming up like that. And I'm seeing this petal in here. All right, let me make this a little bit stronger so that this one, starting off lighter, can be behind it. And this one's edge, it comes down here. And as I look at this photograph, it appears that this comes down right there. Right? When this line comes down right and hits that corner of those other two, this makes a place where parts of the drawing are difficult to understand. I now have this petal in here. So like, let's take a look at this. Which one of these two is in front? Right? Huh. Is this one in front of this one, or is this one coming down? Is that its edge coming down into there? Or is that this one coming down here? It's actually hard to say based on the photograph. And that's why here comes the little cheat. So the cheat is if you just move your head over to the side just a little bit, instead of this line coming in right here, it's going to come in like this. Let me just move this out. It's going to come down just a little bit off that point, so that this one then tucks in there. So that makes the spatial relationship between this, this much more clear. So sometimes you just be wary of this confusing moment. Right? That's this triple junction. So I've talked a little bit about analyzing the shape of these individual petals, putting them all together, drawing the lines that connect them, and working some of those edges. The last thing, oh dear, 3 minutes. That's just sick and wrong. The last thing that I wanted to do is to share with you a little watercolor trick that will make, will help kind of adding some sort of subtle blends of color into this a little bit easier. Let me take a look here. I am going to so on this one, notice that some of them have a little pink edge. Right? And the pink is darker close to the edge. As you get more to the center of the petal, it's more pale. Notice the same thing here. So it's pinker up here, blending down this way along, and then there are these little lines, right? But there's a general pink blend out this way, down into this way. You'll see the same thing here. It is pink all the way across, but it is pinker here along this edge. And here you see just this subtle little pink fading down into white. Here's how I would go about drawing that. Let's imagine you are taking one of these petals, and I am going to stop share, escape, and recording. When a dyslexic has too many choices coming up on his screen, I get visually confused. Here we go. All right. Let me focus this down on the piece of paper. I figured out how to do my manual focus, folks, so that I don't confuse everybody. Or have that blurry thing. Now let's imagine that we have a petal that is coming this way. Not on the screen yet, lightly. So I've drawn it in lightly. And now I want to put I'm going to put some watercolor with this. And I want to show you kind of a neat little strategy. I want to make sure that when so first of all, what color do you use? Make sure you're using a magenta like quinacridone pink, not diluted red. You cannot make pink by diluting red. So you get yourself some pink paint, you dilute it. I want to get sort of a smooth blend coming down this way. Two ways that I'm going to show you. One is I make sure there's not very much pink at all on the tip of my brush. And I can come along here on the edge and I paint it in. And before it dries, I clean off my brush tip, and then with a clean brush, I stroke the bottom edge of this with clear water to pull that down. Oh, it looks like it's coming out very pale on the screen. So if I have we'll do this a little bit more bold. All right, I'm going to have my pink along the edge. I clean off my brush, and then I'm going to pick up that edge before it fully dries. Clean my brush, come down here again, clean my brush. And so I get a little bit of a fade. The problem with this is that sometimes, like you notice over here in this area, it is kind of faded, but I'll zoom in on this. I will zoom in on this. So in this area here, I'm getting a nice fade right there, but right in here, that line is really showing up. So another way of doing that, if this is my petal edge, is I pre-wet the paper. So I'm going to come here with a clean brush, and I'm putting water down on my piece of paper. I want it to be damp, not a standing puddle. And then I can take my pink and lightly come into that edge. And it softens the edge of what I have. Now, if I want it to be more symmetrical, I can get my brush clean again, and I can come back in here. I can kind of mess with this edge, and there it is. Now I've got sort of a soft little blended edge. The secret there was I first got my paper wet and then put my paint on. And that's what's giving me that soft little edge. So you can play with this. If this is the next petal here, I want to, if I'm going to be doing this same technique, especially if the blend is going to come into close to this area, I want to make sure that this area is dry before I get any other paint up in here. So I'm going to make this wet up in here. A good way to see how wet your paper is just to tilt your head around and look for how the reflections of the lights in the room or the sky kind of move on your paper. And you can kind of get a little bit more of a sense of how much water is on your paper. Getting some pink on my brush again, and I'm coming into that edge. And you may like what it does. If you feels too uneven for you, then you clean your brush again. And you can alter the water in some of that area underneath it. While it's still wet, if I want it just a little bit more of a punch up here, I can put in just a little bit there. Then what I might do, once stuff like this is dry, you can come across it and add, whoa. I'm going to test here. There we go. If you're working on dry paper, you can get fine lines that don't blur together. So if you let stuff dry up there, then you're able to come over it with with a detail brush and be able to put in little lines and other details on your lotus. So we've got several ideas that we've worked with here today. All of them can be put together to help you be able to manage a lotus. So this is not a step-by-step on how to draw a particular lotus, but I want to encourage people to think of these individual techniques and how they apply in a lotus drawing. Another thing that you can do is to play with these strategies with a interesting three-dimensional scoop that you make yourself. And that will help you be able to draw what you see. Now, it's a handful of tricks to play with that lotus. I like, sometimes when I make something like this, I will just sort of keep it on hand for a while and play with it and try to find angles or things that it does that surprise me. And when I find little surprises, like why is it making a corner like that? I would not expect, yeah, that's weird. Because you'll have an idea in your head of how things should look, how they should foreshorten. And then the minute you start playing around with something like this, it will do something that you're like, oh, like I would not have expected that far side over here to do that, right? Huh. And look at what the top edge does. That's different than what my expectation would be. And so whenever you notice something that you're seeing with the little paper model that is different than your expectation, this is great, because what you do then is you sort of lean in and go like, oh, why is that? I need to change my mental model of how things turn and foreshorten and things like that. This will help you with lots of different drawings on lots of different kinds of plants. Hope you enjoyed these strategies and techniques. And that is our workshop for today. We're now going to turn over to our kind of group view. If there are questions that